Well, yesterday, the U.S. State Department said it remains uncertain and unclear if indirect negotiations between the United States and Iran will be able to revive the 2015 nuclear agreement, known formally as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or the JCPOA. So the U.S. is preparing for either scenario.
Because the JCPOA, a mutual return to compliance with the JCPOA, is very much an uncertain proposition, we are now preparing equally for either scenario.
Also yesterday, as I mentioned, the U.S. Senate voted 62 to 33 in favor of a non-binding motion that opposes entering into a nuclear deal with Iran that ignores their past behavior and their present intentions. So what does all that mean to us? Well, joining me now to talk about it and talk about a lot more is Congressman Mike Waltz. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee and a decorated Special Forces officer. He serves as the congressional representative for the 6th Congressional District of Florida. Congressman Waltz, welcome back to the program.
Hey, good to see you, Tony.
So let me first, your thoughts on yesterday's, it's a non-binding motion from the Senate, but Senator Lankford successfully has instructed the committee to address this issue of what Iran's been up to, and there's discussion about their relationship with China and that growing alliance.
Well, I think there's a couple of key things to pull from Senator Lankford's motion there. Number one, the number of Democrats and an independent on it. So this has, opposition to this bad deal has been bipartisan for some time. Last year, I led a letter that had over 70 House Democrats on it that said any future deal should not only address Iran enriching material, but also its missile program, its support of terrorism, and the fact that they're holding Americans hostage right now as we speak. And on top of that, that any future sanctions relief should be coupled with much deeper inspections than you had in the Iran deal. And then finally, Tony, Senator Menendez, Democrat senator from New Jersey, the head of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate, has also said no deal is better than a bad deal. This administration has crafted a false choice. Either you enter into even a worse deal than the JCPOA, or Iran gets a nuke. And there are a lot of other options. Americans should care, because if Iran gets a nuke, number one, they're openly threatening Israel. And number two, the entire Middle East will explode into a nuclear arms race, with the Saudis wanting nukes, the Emiratis and the Turks also wanting nukes. And that should be scary for everyone.
And so we don't really have to venture very far to see how those might be used. I mean, we see what's happening right now with Russia and Ukraine, where, if the West says anything or moves too rapidly, Russia starts rattling the nuclear saber, saying, this could end up in a nuclear war. I mean, just think if the Middle East is covered with nuclear weapons.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Tony. And I mean, as bad and horrific as Putin is, I would still even put him in a different category than the Ayatollahs in Iran, which absolutely are Islamic Shia extremists, openly talk about the wiping Israel off the face of the earth, have attacked just as recently as a few months ago energy supplies in both the Gulf and in Saudi Arabia. And then if they can do that under a nuclear umbrella, and they can escalate in order to get us to back down, that puts a world in an incredibly unstable position that will affect every American.
So, Congressman Waltz, with the State Department now saying they're preparing equally for either scenario, either to go forward with the agreement or not to get an agreement, do you think the deal is falling apart?
Well, I think the deal's falling apart over a number of things, but one is the terrorism designation to lift Iran as a terrorist organization. Particularly its Iranian, the IRGC, the Iranian Guards Force. Look, they have alone 600 American soldiers' blood on their hands. And they're, as you've seen, bipartisan opposition to stopping that. So that's one point. And then the other point, Tony, is we've let the Russians and the Chinese craft this deal because the Iranians won't even speak to our negotiators. So it's in a bad place. And what I want to be hearing from Congress what is the administration's plan B? They should have kept President Trump's maximum pressure campaign in place. Had they done so, the Iranians would have come to us from a position of weakness.
And Congressman Waltz, from my vantage point here in D.C., which is just slightly different than yours, but we see a lot of the same things, the political capital that the Biden administration had has been completely expended. I mean, I don't, you see Democrats actually running from them based upon how poorly they've executed both on their foreign agenda and their domestic agenda.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And you just saw, the Ohio primaries yesterday, and the Democrat nominee for Senate for Ohio refused to say whether he would have Biden campaign with him. Meanwhile, you have J.D. Vance openly embracing the America First agenda. So you're right. They're running to the hills. And it's quite coincidental. We have this unprecedented and tragic leak from the Supreme Court to try to divert Americans' attention and remobilize the left. But the agenda has absolutely failed. Will continue to fail. Socialism has always failed domestically, and appeasement has always failed in terms of foreign policy. Sadly, we have a lethal combination of both right now.
I want to get to one of their a leak or a revelation on what part of their domestic agenda, but I want to first ask about Ukraine, intensifying Mariupol, the battle raging there. What's your sense right now with what's happening in Ukraine?
Well, God bless those Ukrainian Marines that are literally fighting to the death. It is their Alamo, but they are taking nearly 12 battalions of Russians with them that they've tied down at that steel plant that haven't been free to attack the rest of the Ukrainian army. My heart breaks for the civilians. It is hell on earth. From all of the reporting that I've seen in Mariupol. The rest of the Russian offensive, even though it regrouped under a new chain of command and consolidated, is still struggling. This is basically a war of attrition now. You just had Speaker Pelosi there. My question is, why is the House out of session? The Senate's in session. The House is not. She's talking tough about supporting Zelensky. Call us back in and let's vote on the next supplemental and get them the arms they need, not to go to a tie, Tony, because that's been the administration's policy, is help them get to the negotiating table. No, let's help them win and drive Russia from Ukrainian soil and deal a devastating defeat to what is an atrocious dictator in Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, we shouldn't play not to lose. We should play to win. Very quickly, breaking story yesterday, the CDC has been using phone tracking data to monitor Americans during the pandemic, seeing if they violated curfews by going to schools and churches. This was without any congressional oversight, judicial oversight. I mean, this is deep state, big brother. And we're talking this, of course, the backdrop of this revelation is the Ministry of Disinformation that they're proposing at the Homeland Security.
Yeah, that's right, Tony. And just to be brief, the other backdrop here is big tech. And Americans, people concerned about their privacy need to wake up to how much data is being collected. Every one of those apps that are free, they're making money by selling your data. That's just the bottom line. And then you couple that with, we still haven't even had an investigation into the origins. The last 3 pandemics have come from China. We expect the next one too, and every one has been more lethal than the last. All of these things we have to get to the bottom of when we flip the House come this November.
Absolutely. There's going to be a traffic jam of investigations that are going to be going forward. Congressman, always great to